All right. Welcome to the Saga of the Clone Saga, aka the Clone Zone. We, the students of S.H.I.E.L.D, are reading through the entirety of the 1990s Clone Saga. It's really bad. And apparently we're also reading whatever this shit is today. I'm Billy.
I'm Michael, and before we throw it to our other host, I just want to say the last episode I got a really very very critical of Sal Buscema and Spectacular Spider-Man, and I'm eating those words because I would give anything to read one of those issues after reading these four that we're going to be talking about today.
And I am Vincent, and our sponsor this week is this wonderful shirt from the students of S.H.I.E.L.D. You can see it's the Infinity Gems. So if you want that and you're not in our club, comment below and we'll send you a link.
Well, wait, technically, isn't the design on Redbubble? So technically, they can get it, right?
Yep. So if you're a fan of our show, and this is not Clone Saga related at all, but if you want one of these, you can buy it.
Listen, Clone Saga merchandise is coming soon with the Jack T-shirt. We
are working on that. We'll have a reveal on the podcast maybe soon. So see our previous episode on Maximum Clonage for Ben Reilly's initial run-in with the New Warriors.
But today doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, we're recording a little out of order. Today we're talking about New Warriors 62 to 65, all written by Evan Skolnick and drawn by Patrick Zurcher. So who the heck are these guys?
I know one of those guys.
Yep, Skolnick.
I hate both of them.
Let's handle Skolnick first because he's less notable. Skolnick was an assistant editor at Marvel under Fabian Nicieza, who is a kind of distant relative of our previous guest host, Damone. So when Nicieza resigned from New Warriors over editorial disputes, Skolnick grabbed the job. Unfortunately, Nicieza, even if he stayed on, wouldn't have made much of a difference since he was abruptly fired from Marvel by Bob Harris in about a year while he was the ongoing writer for X-Men and X-Force. Skolnick himself got laid off shortly thereafter due to the industry crash, and continued freelancing until New Warriors got canceled. And then by that point, Nicieza had become editor-in-chief of Acclaim, the successor to Valiant, and gave Skolnick some gigs, but all those books were total trash. And besides, their primary video game business was just bleeding cash with crappy video games. So that ended too, and Skolnick has not been seen in the industry since, and he writes for video games at Vicarious Visions, as far as I can tell, which pumps out trash for Activision, like the modern Spyro and Crash games and weird ports, which, I mean, I guess Skylanders was a big deal for a few years. But I wonder how he's doing. Probably not so great. Now, Patrick Zurcher, he had runs on Iron Man, Nightwing, and it's all connected because he worked on Cable and Deadpool as well as Thunderbolts with Nicieza. But Mike, how do you know him?
He's drawn Superman.
Yeah, he's been the primary artist on Action Comics within DC Rebirth since the start. Obviously, it's double shipping, so there's all kinds of fill-in artists and stuff. And I guess that's over very soon as Bendis comes in on both the Superman books. Also, nowadays he goes by Patch Zurcher.
Yeah,
Patrick, which is kind of funny. You think he'd have that nickname when he was younger rather than when he's like a middle-aged guy, but whatever. So now on to the New Warriors that we're talking about. The New Warriors are a team of teenage superheroes. They're kind of like the Junior Avengers, but half of them are mutants and they hang out with X-Force all the time since they're.
And they suck.
Fighter.
They're terrible.
They're not. They suck right now.
Defend them. Defend them.
I will. So they actually first appeared in a Tom DeFalco Thor story. Kind of weird first appearance, but then Fabian Nicieza wrote the series for the first 50 issues or so, and the first half was drawn by Mark Bagley before he gets pulled over to Spider-Man. And at this point, he's still drawing Spider-Man, so we've seen kind of Bagley's project after this. It's just still going on. And I swear to you guys, the first 2 years of New Warriors are some of the best 90s comics, I swear. But right now, this Evan Skolnick era is trash.
I never want to see these characters other than Alex Power ever again.
So the founders of the New Warriors, some of which, I think all of which we see here. We've got Night Thrasher. Do you not like Night Thrasher?
Was he even in this book?
Yeah. All right. So Night Thrasher is the only founding member that was wholly original for the team. He's kind of like a black teenage Batman. He's an expert in martial arts and he builds gadgets. He has a light black and red armor. He has battle stats.
You know who's cooler? Batman.
He has
any other Batman character.
Okay, but Night Thrasher gets around on a skateboard, which he also uses to attack people and as a shield.
Oh my fucking
Rocket
God.
Racer also uses a skateboard.
And for emergencies, as we see in these few issues, he also has a mini Uzi that he pulls out. And he has this weird, obscure connection to the Hellfire Club and like this convoluted backstory. There's like, he has like a twin brother or something that sometimes tries to steal his identity. But he's cool. He has a skateboard. He's a black dude on a skateboard.
That's his character.
We have Nova. Nova is a cool character. Nova's awesome.
But he doesn't have his powers here, so what's the point?
Nova had his own series in the 70s. He has flight, strength, speed, and he can absorb and shoot energy, and he does none of that in this story.
He flies a spaceship.
He doesn't even have a costume at this point. Now, one of the coolest characters in all of Marvel, Speedball.
Shut the fuck up.
Shut the fuck up.
You mean Polka Dot Man? Polka Dot Man is who we're talking about right now.
Spider-Man creator Steve Ditko. He debuted in a Spider-Man annual. So we've got more of these Spider-Man connections, which otherwise you wouldn't think make any sense.
The last time he mattered was when he became Penance.
No, that is when he sucked.
The last time he was notable was when he sucked. Because he sucked then and he sucks now.
I mean, yeah, it's because they destroyed the New Warriors franchise. But he has short-lived series in the 80s. Franchise. His powers are awesome. He has these weird.
No, they're fucking not.
Look cool. And then he basically bounces around like kinetic energy and like can turn himself into a bullet and like knock over buildings and people and stuff like that.
Yawn.
Has this amazing like surrealist Ditko costume. And he has giant hair.
He looks like a knockoff Booster Gold.
Nah. And yes. Then we have Firestar, who was created for the Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends TV show. And then more X-Men. Well, so there's the Spider-Man connection. And then there's an X-Men connection because she moved into the comics as a mutant who Emma Frost manipulated. She was like her primary Hellion before she realized, oh, Emma Frost is kind of a dick and ran away. And her powers
looks like the Phoenix. She just looks like the Phoenix.
Her powers are
got that leather jacket.
Her powers are microwave based, which allows her to fly and do fire stuff, and we'll get into that microwave stuff in a minute. Then there is Justice, otherwise known as Vance Astrovic. He has telekinesis, which also allows him to fly, and he started out as a professional wrestler and was hanging out with the Thing. And an alternate future version of himself is Vance Astro of the Guardians of the Galaxy, but the original Guardians of the Galaxy.
So he straight up looks like Gambit with a cape.
So the cooler version of him we weren't reading is what you're saying?
And then there is Namorita, who's kind of barely in these stories. She's kind of a background plot element that comes towards the end. And she is a clone / daughter of Namora, Namor's cousin. So she's just an Atlantean. No, she's a villain at this point, sort of. She's a founder of the New Warriors. Also, by this point, we have Alex Power of Power Pack, and we have Turbo, and I don't care about Turbo. That's the only one that doesn't matter, is Turbo. And some of the ones we meet in these stories.
I thought it wasn't Alex who fucking flew around using a rainbow. I thought it was the girl who did that.
Well, I think you're right, but at this point, he's Power Packs, so he has all of his siblings' powers.
Okay.
Yeah, so he has all their powers, and they're all currently depowered. So into the actual issues, New Warrior 62, this first cover, It's terrible in a 90s way, but in the context of the 90s, I think it's kind of lit. But this
Don't
is
ever say that again.
This is the only cover that is not absolutely horrid.
I was going to say this is the best cover of the 4.
Yeah.
I can agree with that.
So then I don't know if Mike found this interesting since Patrick Zurcher has joined this. The plot for like these first 2 issues is basically there's a Doomsday knockoff named Helix, and he thinks he's fighting the Jackal and Spider side. And again, see our Maximum Clonage episode where we'll discuss that. And then the New Warriors start fighting him. And a major thing here is that Ben Reilly acknowledges he's the real Peter Parker. And again, see previous episodes to discuss that, or at least he's the real Peter Parker for now. And Helix is some mutating Hulk kind of dude who's the sole survivor of a carrion virus outbreak. Also, they don't get into it that much. Like, they hint at it in one of these issues, but he also only speaks Spanish. And he eventually joins the New Warriors, which we don't really see in this either. But, like, I don't know why you'd have someone on your team that you can't communicate with.
Does Helix have enough spikes on his body, yes or no?
It's weird because there's also another character in these stories, like a villain, which we'll get to, who has, I don't think, any connection to Helix, but he also has spikes all over his body.
Because it's the 90s.
Yeah.
Everything has spikes.
So they need to inject Helix with some serum that Ben Reilly shows up with. And then we go over to the Yale campus in Connecticut, and we get another reference to current President Bill Clinton and his admiration of burgers, which we discussed a few episodes ago. I don't know why that's such a common reference.
And then Nova is wearing the worst New York Knicks shirt ever.
Yeah, and he's hanging out with his on-again, off-again girlfriend and talking about how he doesn't have powers. And he's now a bike messenger. So it's a big step down from being a popular superhero.
But, like, why do we care? What relevance does that have to the story?
Because his other girlfriend, named Rita, has been lost and she's still captured somewhere. So it's like his other ex is trying to get back to him, but he has to weigh the options. And then what jumped out to me is then we get a cut back to New York, and the captions say Manhattan Ground Zero, which totally doesn't date well at all.
There's a Yankees reference in here that also doesn't date well.
Yeah, you wanna explain that real quick? I don't know if you remember.
It's in one of the later issues. They talk about like the Yankees fans like rioting at Steinbrenner. This is what 95.
Yeah.
Yeah, in just a few years, the Yankees will go on to win like a bunch of World Series.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then another reference, which I don't think it's totally dated, but it's definitely of the time. Scarlet Spider makes a reference to Dr. Kevorkian.
Yeah, I remember that. Precisely, they will go on to win actually very soon. They would win the 96, 98, 99, and 2000 World Series titles. And I believe they would lose like 1 or 2 of those in there as well.
Congrats to the Yankees and their fans.
For buying their championships.
But the weird connection here is that Dr. Kevorkian, so Dr. Kevorkian, the reason the reference is made is he was a doctor who specialized in euthanization. But he was also played by Al Pacino in a biopic for HBO.
Yeah.
Al Pacino is currently in a biopic for HBO playing Penn State coach Joe Paterno, and we go to Penn State. So everything is connected.
Did anyone watch Paterno?
No.
I didn't watch it.
I heard it's fine.
I heard it's...
That'll be our next sponsor. We'll contact HBO.
Hey, I'll take some HBO money if they want to give us a budget.
So then Ben puts the serum into one of his stingers and knocks out Helix finally, which I thought was kind of cool.
The worst part about this is I thought there's going to be like more of a factor of Scarlet Spider because he just joined the team. He's really not in this. These are really just 4 New Warriors issues.
Yeah.
And I don't know why we read these other than like for the,
Yeah.
I think you're a sick sadistic monster who was just like, I want to make you read 4 issues of New Warriors from the 90s.
They're in Marvel's like Clone Saga collections.
Why? They're not relevant to anything.
Yeah, but Ben Reilly's in them.
But there's also on some of these pages there's just so much text, like just an obscene amount.
The writing is definitely not up to par.
I like the cliffhanger title of the next issue with "Targeted by Eugenics."
Yeah, wait till we get into that. But I like how the New Warriors, they have a monitor duty guy who apparently started out as a groupie, and that is
that asshole. Yeah, I don't care about him.
There's also at the end of the first issue we get introduced to some Indian girl. Her name's like Reena Patel, and she has ambiguous powers.
Time Slide. What's her name? Eventually. Time Split.
And at the end of the first issue, Ben Reilly officially becomes a New Warrior.
Yep.
Whoa.
Great. Who cares?
Onto part 2. I think this is the worst cover out of the 4.
It's pretty bad.
And
they're all pretty bad.
The New Warriors, they're basically just like toying with Helix in their like lab, kind of just like fucking with him like he's a lab rat. And it turns out he's a hyper-adaptoid who changes his body and goes through millions of years of evolution in minutes in response to threats, which is...
Sounds like Doomsday.
Yeah. And Ben, right off the bat, right after joining the team, he's stepping on Justice's toes as team leader.
Well, Justice is a dick, so...
Yeah, Justice is definitely a dick in these few issues. But then Ben makes things really weird because Firestar reminds him of Mary Jane, and he describes her as fresh. And I'm like, this is getting weird already.
Already.
And then I was not arguing, but Luke and I were discussing this. Luke, who has not been on the show, but he is a confidant of ours. So I don't really know what Firestar's official connection to Spider-Man is in the comics continuity. Obviously, she was originally created for the Spider-Man show.
Right.
But I feel like at some point they retconned her to having like some childhood friendship with Peter Parker or ran into Spider-Man in his early years. I don't really know. Like the timeline wouldn't necessarily line up, but I think that's the thing. And so Ben may or may not actually supposed to know who she is, but that retcon might have happened later. It doesn't matter. But that's potentially a retcon hole. And Ben is keeping his secret identity from his new team, which understandable because even if he's not the clone, allegedly, he still looks exactly like Peter Parker.
Yeah, he also I wouldn't want to associate my secret identity with these people. They're a bunch of losers.
Yeah.
They are.
And Hindsight brings his Indian friend right into their secret base. And Justice just clearly says shit and fuck in one sentence.
Yeah, I love it.
There's a lot of it's obviously all bleeped, but there's a surprising amount of cursing in these issues.
Yeah, I was like, what the hell?
'Cause edgy.
And Firestar dips out. She goes to a hospital.
Yo, can we talk about Clayton's get up here for a second? It's like a little he looks like a bellhop.
Hindsight. I think his name's actually Carlton, which is worse.
It's Carlton. I thought it was Clayton for who cares? He's a relevant character.
Carlton is worse. It's so much worse.
His name is Hindsight Lad.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing. Did you notice one of the flashbacks later on in one of the issues where it shows what his costume used to be?
Oh, I went on the Marvel wiki and looked at it. It's terrible.
Yeah, so he's literally like a New Warriors groupie that just forced himself onto the team. And the reason it's called Hindsight is because he used to have rear view mirrors on a helmet so that he could look behind him. This is really a pitiful character.
He only has 46 appearances according to the Marvel wiki.
Yeah, I'm sure probably every single one is a New Warriors, and maybe the Maximum
Well,
Clonage.
one of his like defining moments is giving what's her face her superhero name. So like we read his most major thing he's ever done.
So it's hinted that the hospital Firestar is going to is maybe an OBGYN, and I'm like, oh, things are about to get really awkward. And she's trying to see if her microwave powers affect her health. And I thought this whole doctor-patient privilege was hilarious, where she's like about to reveal her secret identity and her powers to the doctor, because like she's not going to tell me, she can't legally.
Heroes aren't outlawed yet, so.
But Firestar does not get the chance because a dumb-looking villain crashes into the hospital. And at first, I thought they spelled genocide wrong, but it's actually genocide.
Oh my god.
Shut the fuck up.
And Genocide has some kind of ability to medically scan people's DNA and also manipulate her own genes. This is a terrible villain.
Why the fuck not, man? Like.
Also, it's left off the biggest thing the new Warriors are known for in the 2000s, which is starting Civil War.
Well, yeah, that was when they ruined the New Warriors. They were cool in the early 90s, as I said.
Stop being an apologist and just admit all of it's bad.
So also Firestar has her entire costume under her civilian clothes. So I don't really understand what kind of test she was going through. Because like, how do they draw her blood when she has her costume under her sleeve, blah, blah, whatever. Did she piss in a cup and while the doctor watched her?
The doctor doesn't watch you piss.
No, yeah, I think you need a new hospital, Vince.
No. No, a lot of times they do. Well, they watch you
what
from.
Doctor are you going to?
No, they watch your back. It's so that they know that you're not like using fake piss.
Well, you live in Philadelphia where they need to do that. We've never had this problem.
Well, so Genocide is a member of eugenics, as Mike explained, and their motivation, their plan is to sterilize or euthanize people without powers. And
no, it's people without powers and people with deformities.
Well, yeah. And at one point, and I guess they all have similar powers, because at one point, one of the minions says, in reference to Firestar, check out those alleles. And I was like, that might be the worst line I've ever read. At the end of the second issue, Firestar thinks she's being saved by the New Warriors, but actually it's Psionics, which is Night Thrasher's rogue team, and most of the members used to be genetic experiments. And one of the other members, the only other one that's really important, is former Avenger and New Warrior Rage. And Rage is awesome because he is a black dude who is totally a teenager, but due to his like powers, his body looks like he's like an adult. And so he showed up to the Avengers one time and was like, yo, y'all motherfuckers better put me on the team because you need diversity. That was literally, he showed up to the Avengers. He's like, I'm an Avenger now because I'm black. You need a black dude. And he's like, Falcon doesn't count because he was forced diversity. But then Cap is like, that's kind of what you're doing too. But he does join the Avengers as a reservist member at the same time that Sandman and technically Spider-Man do. But Spider-Man doesn't really show up to any missions at that point. But then Rage is kicked off the Avengers when Captain America realizes that he's a child. Which the Avengers, they've definitely violated since then with fucking Miles Morales and Kamala Khan on the team.
You mean Kid Arachnid?
Exactly. And so Rage was demoted to the New Warriors, and then he got kicked off the New Warriors for being an aggressive asshole. And
Rage is just an unlikable prick wherever he goes.
And at this point in time, he has a really, really 90s costume, but like it almost fits with his like dumb premise. As far as the other nobodies, they don't matter, but just out of curiosity, I looked them up. One of them that's actually named at some point is Pretty Persuasions, which is a terrible code name for a superhero. She's also a former stripper Then there is Impulse, who should have a lawsuit coming at any time now. And then there is Mathemanic and Coronary, who are
There's also
former med school students.
there's also a character in here named Obsidian as well.
Yeah, I think, isn't that the elder spiky villain?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
I don't know who Obsidian
I think Obsidian was the guy in like the weird Nazi clothes who was just completely black.
No. That was Obsidian's assistant.
Oh, then Obsidian was the weird spiky villain.
Yeah,
All
he was a weird spiky guy.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that there was like an interlude with Namorita and the weird spiky dudes at some point. Nothing happens important at that point. So
I could say that about this entire 4 issues.
Moving into the third part, it turns out that Night Thrasher owns the medical facility. That's why he showed up, which, I mean, it's just like Batman. It's like, I already bought the place. Like, I own it. It's cool.
Shut the fuck up.
And the New Warriors do end up showing up. And, of course, there's some misunderstanding fight takes place. Ben Reilly attacks one of the Psionics members and just totally lets a villain escape because he has no idea what's going on. And then Speedball, he's like, I want to fight someone. And he runs into Rage, and Rage just catches him and throws him against the wall, which causes the fight to chill down. And Speedball points out that he works very hard to get his hair like that. And I commend him. I appreciate it. Later on in one of the issues, we also see Speedball like in his civilian clothes, and his hair is totally normal. So whenever he gets in his costume, he totally like mooses up his hair, which I think is hilarious. And Night Thrasher, as I discussed earlier, he whips out his Uzi and just shoots at Genocide. And so Genocide's whole thing is she wants to kill this woman because she has a genetic heart defect. And if she passed it down, that would be bad for society, but also she shouldn't live anyways because she's a drain on society. And Night Thrasher, real quick, is like, have you ever heard of Hitler? And she's like, yeah, he's a little dickhead because his reasons were political. Me, I want to restart evolution. Which, like, I don't know if it's political. I don't know if Hitler's like views on eugenics are political. I think that's not a good outlook on it. And so it turns out, as I expected, Firestar will be sterile if she keeps using her powers, which causes her to break down in the middle of the fight and start talking about her plans that she has with Vance for their future. What you guys might not know, but maybe you'd put it together, is that in the future, like 10 years after this, she actually does get cancer from her powers.
Well, that's not cool.
Good. She deserves it.
Oh, no one deserves that.
I think she does.
Night Thrasher goes to comfort her, and then immediately Justice freaks out at him, tries to attack him.
It's like Firestar is the only character in this book I like, and that's only because of the cartoon.
No.
Ben Reilly's the only character in this book I like.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I forget he's there because he hardly does anything.
And then Night Thrasher and Justice, they get into this argument about how much force to use because Night Thrasher doesn't care about killing people. And it's like, your teammate has microwave powers. You might want to rethink your team roster if you don't want Night Thrasher on it. And then there's this subplot about a shape-shifting alien journalist that murders someone, and it's just in this issue, and it has that has nothing to do with the Clone Saga. And then in the end of the third issue, Alex Power changes his name from Power Packs to Powerhouse. Neither are good code names.
I don't know. I kind of like Powerhouse.
Better names too.
And then the Indian girl shows up, introduces herself as Time Slip, and she has a skimpy costume, but later they acknowledge that it's skimpy and that it was Hindsight's idea. And I'm like, kind of having
a little perv.
She also forces herself on the team, and right as she joins, she's like, "Yeah, Speedball, you should retire because I have weird visions."
There's
So
also a moment where like Speedball is just complimenting her, and like hindsight's like, "Hey, I saw her first."
yeah, he calls dibs on her.
Yeah.
To be fair, Speedball isn't complimenting her quite. He's literally staring at her ass. So there's
That's a compliment.
some bad awkward gender politics at play, just like the 90s. So in these 4 issues, we've had like 3 people join the team, just kind of ridiculous. So the final issue we read for this, New Warrior 65, another shitty cover with Namorita in this terrible costume.
I don't know what's going on with the art and coloring in this issue, but oh boy, is it bad. Everyone looks orange.
Yeah, so she's being mind controlled by Undertow, which was kind of a subplot in the previous issues, but it wasn't worth mentioning. They're busting up some drug runners, which she's kind of okay with, but she can't choose anyways. Rich shows up. He wants to find his ex-girlfriend Nita. Firestar and Justice catch up, and she's going to slow down on her powers, but she wants to further her relationship with Vance, and he asks for the check very quickly. Alex Power, the big reveal here. Like, I feel like if you were a Power Pack fan, keeping up with the New Warriors for Alex Power, I feel like you'd be like, oh shit. But the Power Pack ship Friday shows up, and despite it being totally sentient and able to fly itself, Rich puts it on manual because he has lots of experience through video game simulations. And they fly in, they fight some people, some bombs get planted. Namorita helps them escape, but she doesn't. And that's pretty much it. This 4th issue was like part of a new story, but also it doesn't continue into the next New Warriors issue. And like this one was the weakest one, and it didn't really have anything to do with the rest. So does anyone have any final thoughts on these issues?
I hate you for making me read this.
I hate myself.
An important part.
Shut the fuck up. No, it wasn't.
I believe we will definitely read. I think there might just be only one more New Warriors issue that we have to read.
Good.
56. And then
I'm
since
sorry,
we're recording
I
these out
spoke
of
so badly
order,
of Spectacular Spider-Man. I want it back.
since we're recording these out of order, there's actually 2 more because there's the New Warriors issue right before this is part of Maximum Clonage.
Okay.
So yeah. Any final thoughts? I mean, this was terrible. Like, these were terrible comics, and the characters I like don't even really act in character at this point either. I mean, it was very 90s, but I didn't think the patch searcher art was terrible. Like, it wasn't.
The art was all right. It was very, very 90s. That last issue though was really, really bad. I don't know if it was our scan of the book or that the coloring was off. Something about that issue was really, really bad though.
Yep.
I hated the art, and I think they put way too much happening on every page. And then the stuff that didn't have a shit ton of art happening had a shit ton of dialogue, and it was just really annoying to look at.
Yeah, I would say this is definitely. I mean, this might be one of the weaker episodes so far.
It's easily top 3 worst.
Yep.
Probably like 2. I mean, we have a definitive date for the next episode if we want to announce it.
Let's save that for offline. All right, everyone, thanks for watching, and tune in next time for the Saga of the Clone Saga.
You know what I'm